Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD, Get Shit Done Venture Studios, premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. By the way, GSD stands for Get Shit Done. It ain't about the talk, it's about the action. Today in GSD, we have over 108 companies from 73 countries around the world. We are a venture studio, we're a family office, we're a PR company, we're software development. We have a 360-degree ecosystem. With that, I'd like to introduce an incredible guest today, and we're going to talk about Niraj's impressive career, including his time in the Finger Lakes at Cornell, and how he co-founded BlueMind, and a little bit about his background and how you can make a unicorn from Toronto, Canada. We love Toronto.
Hey, thanks so much, Gary.
Hey, how you doing? You've had an impressive career in tech and leadership. Why did you decide to do BlueMind? I mean, you've been around, you've got incredible background, but why did you decide to found a company?
Well, Gary, I was in the corporate construct. I was a VP of marketing for a Silicon Valley company called Rambus, and I was seeing trends that were emerging that my industry, the semiconductor industry, was failing to meet head on. Okay, we were stuck in a rut for the last 50 years since the development of semiconductor technologies revolutionized our world, right? Everything runs on chips nowadays with electronics and software. But there was this new exciting workload called artificial intelligence that was making an appearance in many different applications and workloads. And I saw this coming up. I realized that our industry, our products of the time were woefully inadequate to meet the demands of AI. That was kind of the driving force behind me starting BlueMind. I met my co-founder, John, fortuitously, just by chance, under a completely different context. And he told me about his true passion, which was low power AI. And I said, that's really what we need to take AI to where it needs to go.
So when you were at Rambus, you remember as a VP of marketing, you had meetings to have meetings about meetings.
Yeah.
About meetings. How does it, when you go through that kind of transition from Rambus to where you are today, it's a totally different mindset, right? When you're starting your own company. And, it's not like you're going to get your paycheck every week and this is what it's going to be. You can have, I was with a guy out at Stanford University a couple of years ago, and I said, well, how did this happen to you? How did you grow your company? He said, well, quite frankly, I didn't have anything else to sell. He said, we had a project management tool. And this is a direct conversation with Stuart Butterfield from Slack. And he said, I didn't have a choice, right? I had to make some changes. And he said, that's what we did. And it worked. He said, but I didn't know if it was going to work or not. He had he said 37 or 38 employees. But that's what it's like. You never know. There's ups and downs and ins and outs. So on your side, going from a job where you got your stock options and you're growing the company and you know that everything's fine, and you got your 3 or 4 weeks of vacation, how is it going into a startup? How was it like that day that you made? Were you ready for it, or did it take a while to adjust to it?
Well, it's interesting, right? People experience this in different ways. Some have likened it to jumping off a cliff and building your plane on your way down, right? It is in many ways like that. It's a jump into the unknown, and it takes a tremendous leap of faith. However, I'll say this, right? I think there are things that can help you, and you don't have to do it alone. It's important you surround yourself with people, advisors, mentors, co-founders, investors that understand your challenge and can help you along the way. So I've benefited greatly from that help. So I don't feel like I've had to do it on my own. But yes, it is a mind shift. It's one that I've been preparing for I would say a good 6 to 8 years before I ultimately did it. And it's not only about forming the business, of course, because of the uncertainties you just outlined, it requires a tremendous amount of support from your family, your friends, right? That has to be there in order for you to take this leap. So I was fortunate enough that those conditions presented themselves, and I was able to do this on my own. Is something I've wanted to do for a very long time. And like you said, I have the feeling of I don't have a choice. I have to do this because I don't know what else I'm gonna do. So it's kind of the curse of the founder, I kind of call it, where you don't quite fit in the mold, and you got to go do something different. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I started my first company at 21 years old. I was right out of graduate school, graduated early, I got out early, and then did my paper, right, my research report. After I got done, I said, this is crazy. And but what happened is I remember the first one. In fact, I started not too far from where I am right now, and people said it's never going to work. And I was like, the more they told me it wasn't going to work, the more I said I was going to do it. Right? It was like it pushed me, and I remember doing it, and I made about $9 million in sales in about 2.5 years, and from scratch. And I didn't even know about venture capital because in business school, I mean, they talked about it, but it's not till you deal with it. And so I said, oh, I'll just get personal loans. What I didn't realize is you're obligated on personal loans. I thought that's normal. How in the world, right, would you ever not pay a loan back, whether it's personal or corporate? I'm just, I guess that's grown up in a farm in Pennsylvania. But I did it. And then I thought, oh, this is really great. It's easy. It's not easy. I was lucky. Luck is really important. And so when you go down through it and see those kind of, I remember I was with Jensen, the founder of NVIDIA. So actually, I went into his office. We had lunch with him. I took some of my MBA students over to meet with him. And, you don't know. I mean, I just saw he's approaching a $4 trillion company. And, people didn't believe in it. He started with PC boards back in 1993. In fact, he started at Denny's restaurant, not too far from Santa Clara, right? It's unbelievable. But that's it. So when you went down through it, can you explain in simple terms what makes Blue Mind's all analog neural network technology so groundbreaking compared to traditional digital methods?
Sure, Gary. Fundamentally, all computer chips today, whether they're in your cell phone, your laptop, the servers sitting in the cloud, all run on an architecture that's about 80 years old, the von Neumann computer architecture. This was an incredibly powerful way of dissecting the compute problem and the software processing problem, taking human written sequential code and mapping it to run on actual hardware, right? Because software needs to run on semiconductors, on chips. So it outlined this architecture that served us incredibly well for the last 50 plus years, but it is running out of steam with the machine learning workloads, which are massively parallel, very compute intensive. So what we set out to do is to say, okay, what if computers didn't exist today, and we have neural networks to process? What is the ideal computer you would build for this workload? And the answer is, it looks nothing like the chips that we have today that power the computers of today. This is the computer we have developed. The architecture we're bringing to market is more heavily akin to the human brain, which is an incredibly efficient biochemical signal processor as opposed to a traditional von Neumann computer. That's what we're commercializing. The other thing to note, though, is we are a product company. We want to bring products out into the market that improve people's lives. We're not although our technology is definitely deep tech and heavily R&D driven, we're not an R&D shop. We're actually building products. So one of the constraints we gave ourselves was, hey, this technology, as great as it's going to be for this workload, has to be manufacturable in large volumes and at a low cost, right? So those were some of the bounds we put to ourselves, and that's what basically is driving our mission here at Blue Mind.
So You chose the analog approach for AI processing. What are the specific advantages in areas like power, latency, and cost? Why does it make such a tremendous difference?
It makes a huge difference in many ways. The von Neumann computer architecture, which, like I said, was really designed for human written sequential code, which gets compiled into an instruction set that gets run on a computer. What we do is we flip the whole thing over its head. We say, okay, what is the primitive circuit element that can process these fundamentally matrix math? It's algebra, vector multiplications, additions, and so forth that need to be processed to run these neural networks. What is the most efficient way of doing it? And what we discovered is, okay, you know what? Instead of us building an abstraction, a circuit that runs a multiplication or an addition operation, let's exploit the device physics itself. Okay, exploit the device physics to actually perform the computation. So we took a look at the transistor, which in a digital circuit is used as a binary element, right? A 1 or a 0. We said, okay, well, this little device can do way more than that. So we use it as a multi-level storage and compute element, and we exploit the physics of the device to actually do the mathematics instead of building an abstract computer. That's what unleashes significant performance gains, not a 2x, 4x, 10x better, but more like 100x, 1000x, 10,000x better in some cases. So that's really fundamentally what we're doing different. I commented as well on the parallelization. Once you look at each transistor, not as a 1 or 0 switch, but as a storage and multiplication element, you can do a lot more work in parallel. And that's what improves not only efficiency, but latency, performance, throughput, all of these things as well.
So we're talking about today, it's bridging the commercialization gap. But what specific advice, Niraj, would you give Deeptech startups? Because it's not so easy, right? Going from a lab prototype to a market-ready product. What advice would you give them? And what are the pitfalls?
There's many things to consider here, Gary. At top of my list would be do not confuse TRL to market readiness. So TRL is the technology readiness scale that was originally invented by NASA in the 70s that attempts to measure, from basic research, which is TRL1, all the way to TRL9, which is, okay, the product is ready for large commercial deployment in real world situations. So a lot of scientists and folks with roots in academia kind of look at that chart and go, okay, well, I got to do A, B, and C to move up to the next TRL level. And they kind of march through this, oblivious to the market realities. That is completely different. Building a commercially viable product at the right price point, with the right scale, with the right low barriers of adoption and entry into a marketplace. Those concepts are ignored until it's way too late and too much money has been burned and too much effort has been spent. So doing that as early as possible, even when you're at TRL1, when you've done the basic research, is really, really important to get that early customer market-driven validation for your ideas. If no one's going to pay for it, right?
Yeah, the customer development, Steve Blank and Bob Dorff. In fact, Bob was the dean of one of my accelerators that I had started many years ago. And, that's one of the challenges, right? For all the startups out there, you don't validate, you come up with a hypothesis, you don't test it, you think you're right,
Yep.
And you're wrong. And I've done it myself, 3 startups in, had the same situation where I thought I was right, and I was wrong. And it cost me $1 million over a 3-year period of time to fix the problem. And if I just would have done it right from the beginning, it wouldn't have been an issue. But I didn't do it. And so you learn, go out there, talk to customers. One of the things, I don't know about you, but one of the things that I've done is that we've taken, like, I'll take a prototype or I'll do a PowerPoint presentation, go out to 50 people in Silicon Valley. I walk down the street on University, go into coffee shops and say, hey, do you have 3 minutes? Can I talk to you? And I'll show them what I have on my computer, and I'll record it with my phone, and then I'll replay it so I can play it back to my engineers. Say, listen, they like this, they don't like this. They like this, they don't like this. And then what we do is instead of burning through the cash like crazy and coming up with something somebody doesn't want, like I've done, right? You do that. I love the way you're approaching.
It's crucial, Gary. And by the way, you have benefited tremendously being a part of the Silicon Valley ecosystem, right? You can go to a coffee shop and talk to a number of people, kind of organically, right? Through osmosis, you're getting all this information. Someone sitting in a different state away from Silicon Valley or on the other side of the world is not privy to that kind of,
and people don't. I'll tell you what, Niraj, I walked into Starbucks and Tim Cook was there. And I went over to Tim Cook and started talking to him. And I learned more in that 20 minutes with Tim Cook about Apple than I had ever written in any book by Isaacson, et cetera. It was just interesting to have a conversation with him. The thing with Jensen from NVIDIA, going over to his office and having lunch, or when I was started my company, Findo, and then Eva, getting some advice from him by calling him up, and he gave me advice. Of course, he wasn't as famous, in 2018 as he is now, but he helped. That's important because if you don't have the feedback, how do you know? You build stuff in a vacuum. You don't know what it is, right? And
Correct.
Most people never do it. It's crazy, and it takes. You were VP of marketing, and you had to go out and present messages to people. So you had that in your DNA, but not everybody does. And so we say there's networking contacts, operational expertise, and access to capital. And if you have those three in a resilient team, any company can be pivoted to become a unicorn, right? We talk about pivots, but we don't talk about where a pivot goes. A pivot can be a circle, right? You can pivot if you have people that have done it. And they've gone down through and they've gotten smacked in the mouth a few times because they didn't do the right thing, right? Or they went down the wrong path, or they've had issues with VCs and they've never dealt with family offices. By the way, for everybody out there, 99% of the wealth is 1% of the population. Limited partners, virtually every ventures funds, limited partners are high net worth families. They're there. They are investors. By the way, they have family offices too. If you go on LinkedIn, they'll just say family office. It won't say the family's name. That, once you get into the Holy Grail and get inside those titanium doors, you can figure stuff out. Because guess what? Those families are very interested in investing in companies. High growth.
I agree, Gary. And that brings me to my second point, the funding realities of a deep tech startup. And the point you made about family offices is absolutely real. As a technical founder, it's very easy to fall into grab the first check that comes across your desk, right? If you get some money, you take it. My experience has been, especially in this deep tech world, all dollars are not the same. It's really important. It's really important you seek out.
For the people, they're not all the same. And by the way, they can be like boat anchors around your neck if you get the wrong money.
Exactly.
Because here's the thing, right? So the average VC is probably 24 to 33. Only 10% have ever built a company in general. 10%. So they're not operational, but they know finance. Finance doesn't drive a company. What drives a company are the networking contacts, people that care about you, the operational expertise. Have you floated the boat through these tough waters? And if you've done that and you've got people to support you, you can build it. It'll happen because that money will show you which direction to take.
Exactly. It's very key, particularly for a deep tech startup where your time to revenue is 5 to 10 years. You're going to run into unforeseen problems with the tech. You're going to have to churn on things. You're going to lose customers as a result. You need an investor and members of the board that understand these challenges deeply and have lived it themselves, right? Otherwise, you're going to run into all kinds of problems like you described with the money you've taken on, and they become more like anchors holding you back rather than helping you along.
Exactly.
So this is very, very important.
And here's this, the average VC tells you it's like being married, right?
Yeah.
I've read some recent statistics said the average VC, before they invest, they go into due diligence, meets with you about 2.7, 2.8 hours. That's it. Right? Now, I don't know about you, but unless you have some kind of arranged marriage where you're family, you would never marry somebody after 2.7 hours. You would think it's crazy.
That's right.
But guess what? You get into these relationships and maybe it's not a good fit. And so you go down through and they try. I've been in those meetings, right? I got burned one time when I went
Right.
down through and I got an investor, and that investor went down and said, I didn't understand all this whole thing. I wanted his money, so the company's money so bad. He said, "Well, I want 2 board seats." Well, now they start taking they started it hurt the board because now they have 2 seats and they wanted extra power, right?
Absolutely. And one litmus test I've applied that I've found helpful is if you're talking to an investor and he or she hasn't invested in a company like yours. So for example, I'm a semiconductor industry company. If I'm talking to an investor that has never invested in semiconductors before, right? That's an immediate red flag up front, right? And the earlier stage you're in, that's a bigger red flag because that investor, if you're going to be the first canary in a coal mine for them in this industry, that can lead to all kinds of problems. So vet your investors as much as they're vetting you, and make sure you're getting into that marriage with your eyes open.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. So, we're going down through. We're going to run a little bit longer today with the show. I hope you don't mind. But I wanted
Sure.
to.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem.
So, sustainability is a core pillar of Blue Mind. How does the technology contribute to achieving these net negative emission goals? What do you do? Is it because you're so efficient? What is it exactly?
Well, Gary, the energy that's going to be consumed by AI is going to be a serious load on humanity going forward. Okay, you can believe whoever stats you want to believe, but some measures put this at, okay, within the next 30 years, AI could consume 90% of the energy generated by humanity today within the next 30 years. So, those numbers vary drastically, of course, depending on whose stats you're looking at. But it's hard to dispute that, okay, this trend is exponentially growing upwards. And as more and more workloads move to adopting AI and machine learning, there is going to be a tremendous amount of energy that's going to be needed. And as frontier use cases like robotics, like human augmentation come online, this need is going to keep growing. So we saw this, and we see this not only as a sustainability challenge, but as an economic challenge as well. Because if you're not going to be able to deploy AI, we're already seeing this, right? We're seeing the big hyperscalers investing in nuclear power plants and energy facilities to power data centers, right? That's playing out today. This is a very dangerous trend because it's making AI the domain of a few powerful people, companies, etc. And this is going to be a real big challenge. We believe AI should be democratized and available to everybody. Prices need to be low, energy needs to be low to make this really deployable in every possible use case. Now, on the economic side, the other angle here is there's serious technological challenges as well. These GPUs and servers that we're building, the packages that these chips are going in literally can melt themselves if you don't handle the thermodynamic efficiency of the silicon itself properly. So this is becoming a real limiter to how much capability we can actually deploy as well. So given all of this, we thought, hey, it's time we take a step back. I mean, there's one track where there's a lot of investment and focus is how do we expand our amount of energy production in the US and across the world. But another track to take, and I think this has to be done simultaneously, is how do you make this way more efficient so that you don't need as much energy? And this is even more crucial for workloads that are battery operated, right? You only have a battery so big, and battery technology, by the way, hasn't grown at the same rate as compute demand has grown, right? So if you're using a cell phone, which has a rather large battery, or smart glasses that have tiny batteries, what are you going to do? You want to do more AI? You want to do a Gen AI on the device? Well, you're out of luck, right? You're going to have a device that runs for an hour and then it's out of battery. So this is why we've taken this track and said, okay, we've got to look at AI differently. We can't just shoehorn this into chips that were designed to do video processing or software processing. This demands a new architecture, a new way of looking at things. Hence our move to analog. Hence our move to greater efficiency. This simplifies a lot of challenges, like the packaging challenge I was describing earlier. Now you can do more performance in that package in a cheaper package and not have it melt down on you. Now you can put Gen AI on smart glasses and have it run for days, right? So these are the kind of innovations we will unlock once we get to a new form of compute that is purpose-built for AI.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the challenge for all of us out there is what I call infobesity. We've got about 176 zettabytes of data on the planet today. If you take DVDs or CDs and stack them one top of another, Niraj, that would go 128 times between Earth and Moon, growing about 69.6% per year. So infobesity is the problem. And you're right. If it's even now it's happening. You get ChatGPT and you've got the $200 enterprise version. Not everybody's going to pay $200 a month for it, or multi-agent large language models where you have them working as a team. So if we don't use the resources wisely, nothing good's going to happen. We have global warming too. The more we do this, the more we start heating the planet up. We got to figure out ways, and I love what you're doing. It's highly efficient and optimized. But the other thing is, it's like having a Ferrari in the garage. People don't know about it. And if you can't get the Ferrari, you're a marketing guy, right? The problem is, if they don't know about it, or they don't know who you are and they don't trust it. And I'm not saying you in particular, but that's a problem because they don't know. That's one thing about the Valley. It's really good is because if you're inside of the loop in the group, people I'm sure when you came out to Rambus, right? When you would go out to Silicon Valley, you understood that it's like a different kind of click.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I think, one point though I want to highlight is it's a heavy lift. Okay, it's a very, very heavy lift. And this is the third point I want to highlight in the Deeptech founder mindset, if you will, is it always ends up being way more challenging than you expect, because your default mindset, when you've got this great idea and this technology you've nurtured for years and put in a lot of sweat and blood into, the natural way of thinking is, well, this is an obvious home run, right? I show this to 10 people, they're all going to buy it. And you have a lot. It's really important to know you have a lot of blinders on, and you're not even aware of what the customer thinks about your product. So it's a very heavy lift trying to drive market adoption, and you have to be smart about it. You're not going to get that multi-million-dollar sale on day one. Take the 100K proof of concept with a key strategic, build validation points step by step. And be very deliberate about it, right? That is very, very key in a deep tech world, because if you can, in that 5 to 7 year development cycle, if you can get those wins in along the way with a key strategic that is interested in your technology, that is gold, right? That's validating what you're doing. That is making you way more appealing to further investors. That is de-risking your whole go-to-market. And you got to have that. If you locked yourself in a room somewhere for 5 to 7 years, 100% you're going to get it wrong coming out the other end.
Yeah, you're going to probably fail, right? Because you don't. It's not just about getting the Ferrari out of the garage. It's about taking the Ferrari out and driving in the neighborhood, but more importantly, running a new race. Who's going to win Formula One? And that's where it comes in.
Yeah.
So we're coming up to the end of the show, and then if you can stay on after the show, we can speak a few minutes. But what's one key lesson, Niraj, you've learned on your entrepreneurial journey with Blue Mind that you'd like to share with other startup founders? So if you could say one thing that would be interesting for you, what would that be?
Well, I think one of the key things is your team, right? And the structure of your team is really, really important, and how that evolves as you grow from lab to a startup to a commercial operation, you've got to very deliberately manage your team going forward. And I think that's really key because, again, early stages, especially in a deep tech company, you value that technical expertise, as you should. But as you grow and expand and build the commercial traction, you've got to bring in those capabilities into your team as well. And if you don't, that's taking you down to a path of failure. So it's important to be very mindful about the people you involve yourselves with, the co-founders you work with. They've got to be complementing you because early on, you're not going to have many other people. So pick co-founders and get into this with your eyes open, with a keen eye on what each individual brings to the table. That's really what's going to improve your odds of success down the road.
Yeah, no, you're right about it. You can't just, sometimes, and for all of you out there, look for those complementary skills. So if you got somebody that's heavy tech, find somebody that's heavy marketing that can complement it, and maybe operations. Don't go beyond 3 co-founders because investors don't like it. So try to keep it more narrow. And then the other thing is, I had a conversation with Andrew Straczynski, who's a right-hand guy for Rupert Murdoch. I had dinner with him in California. In fact, Carl Page, Larry's brother, was the one that put it together for us. And we had a couple of glasses of wine, and he said, I've researched 3,000 entrepreneurs. And I said, can you tell me one lesson that you've learned? He said, well, the most successful entrepreneurs on the planet have one thing in common. And I said, what's that? He said, amnesia. They never talk about the past. They only look at going forward. He said they never let those boat anchors hold them back. So for all of you out there, don't let the boat anchors hold you back, and keep moving forward. Believe in your dreams, visualize. So thanks for coming on the show, Niraj. Really appreciate it. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you? LinkedIn, etc.
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. Check out our website, bluemind.ai, and learn more about the company. Ping me on LinkedIn. Those are 2 good ways to get a hold of me.
Sounds great. To all of you out there, thanks for joining one more time. GSD presents Silicon Valley and AI and Tech. This is Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. We'll be back again soon with another exciting edition. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.